Hi, and welcome back to Beyond the Monsters. Today I have Lyndsey again for part 2.
Yeah.
Okay, Lyndsey, I think we should start from when you guys are going to court.
Okay.
Jury trial.
Okay.
Let's start from there.
Ooh,
Yeah.
rough time to start.
Yes.
That's a rough starting
Yes.
point. So going to jury trial, obviously that whole process was really difficult because I had just left a situation where I had been made to question every decision I was making. I didn't trust the world. I had been held prisoner essentially for a whole year.
Yeah.
So leaving my apartment felt really scary. And like I had mentioned before, I was so lucky to have been put in contact with the refuge, and they got me into an apartment where my kids and I kind of started regaining our confidence and who we were. And I think that was huge.
Yes.
It was really difficult because I had to let him know where the kids were. And because he was released right after his arrest, he would like drive our apartment complex. And there was an active protective order against him. But every time I tried to enforce it, they would tell me that unless I could get a clear picture of his license plate, or like I couldn't prove that it was him, essentially, it was impossible to enforce. And so I just constantly felt unsafe. And I was told,
like he's intimidating you.
yes, absolutely.
Because obviously he knows you're going to eventually
Yeah.
see him.
Well, and I was told that custody had not been set for our children because we hadn't gone to divorce yet. And so if he takes the kids, police aren't going to go and get the kids from
You
him
have to fight.
because there's no paternity set. So they're not going to sit and take it. So I was scared to like send my daughter out to play on the park or have
Right.
my kids walk home from school
Right.
because I knew he was still not working. And I'm having to work full time because I'm having to provide and pay rent and do all of the things that normal adults do.
Right.
And so I was constantly living in fear, and that was really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it was almost a blessing in disguise that it did take so long to get to jury trial because it gave me time to kind of get my bearings and figure out what I needed and what my place was in it, because that was what frustrated me so much the first time, was that no one could identify what my part was in it. And so it gave me that time to identify where I stood and how I wanted to show up in the situation, because being thrown into anything with the justice system is terrifying and confusing, and it happened so fast.
Right.
And so because of COVID, everything was just paused. So we were having hearings, and it sucked. It sucked so bad to have us all hold on to that day, and it was hard too because I knew that every detail of that day was going to be scrutinized.
Mm-hmm.
And so I couldn't forget it, and I couldn't let myself forget
Right.
it, and it was so hard. Every time I tried to sleep, that's what I saw. And every time it was just hard, and it was hard to have people understand the emotional toll that takes.
Right.
So, like I said, I think he tried to push that because he thought it would intimidate me and I wouldn't go through with it.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, the kids didn't want to go. And I think he knew I was the one dealing with the emotions on the back end of that.
Yeah.
I was the one where they were like, I don't want to do this. And we were all in therapy, which was huge for us. We couldn't have done it otherwise because my therapist saved she was my person, right? She was my sounding
good.
board, and it was really hard because I had therapists that weren't great.
Right.
Right when I left him, I had gone to a therapist, and I remember she told me that I was going to be investigated by CPS because I went back to an abuser and took my kids back into an abusive situation knowingly, and that was me putting my kids in danger, and so now I was going to be investigated.
She
And
just
I was
flat out
terrified.
said that to you?
I never went back to her.
Yeah.
I was terrified because I was like, okay, I was trying to make my family work. Like,
Right.
I don't understand. And
Right.
it was just so scary for me to trust anyone and try and get them to understand what I was. And I'm like, you're a therapist.
Right.
Like, you're supposed to understand
Yes.
this. And she just made me feel like I had done everything
Like it's your
wrong.
fault.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I had already felt that.
Right.
Like,
Right.
thank you.
Right.
I
You're
know.
supposed to be helping me not feel that way, lady.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when I moved, I found a new therapist down where I was at, and she was incredible. Like, she was the one, I remember one time she told me, she's like, your opinions don't have to be fact-based, right? And I was like, what? And she's like, no, you can just have an opinion. And I was like, I don't understand.
You're like, "Wait,
Like,
yeah,
yeah, because
because you weren't allowed to."
no, I had to defend every thought I had.
Yes.
So I think therapy was huge for us, and just like being able to kind of regain who we were. And
Mhm.
so whenever the kids would come to me and say, I don't want to do this, like, I don't want to go to court, rightfully so. Who does? I don't either. Right.
Right.
And I think she helped me a lot when she's like, okay, like, no, you don't have to defend his actions. Like, you can
Yeah.
say, I don't want to go either, but unless dad holds himself accountable, this is what we have to do because
Right.
that's the situation we've been put in, right?
Right. Right.
So I didn't ever want them to feel like it was like bad mouthing him, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, they saw him. They saw him do it.
Well, and the good thing is too, I would think probably you could look back and think they're learning that you have consequences for
Yes.
behaviors.
Well, and I think that was the biggest thing
Yeah.
because I had always been the one to get him out of the consequences, right? I
Yeah.
had been the one to
Or
hide his
defend
actions, and
or
no one
yeah.
in my family knew he was dating other women. And again, why would I advertise that? That is humiliating for me
Right.
as a wife.
Right.
So I had done that for years, and I was just like, okay, like, not my responsibility. It's not my
Mhm.
responsibility to defend this or get you out of it.
Right.
And so it sucked, but it helped us stand our ground. So we go to jury trial, and it was a 2-day jury trial. And I remember asking, so for our trial, it was attached to the police station, the courtroom was. And the kids had not seen him in person. They had been doing once a week Zoom calls with him, or
Okay.
twice a week or something like that. It was very, very little and only on Zoom. And so
Okay.
I had asked the judge, I said, can the kids Zoom and talk to you? Like, or the attorney, like, do they have to come in? They can be on property, but can they just Zoom? Like, I will
Yeah.
come in, I will sit there, but can they just answer the questions via Zoom? And his attorney was like, no, absolutely not. And he had the kids come in and
Of course he
testify.
did. Yeah.
And I remember they brought my son in, and you could tell he was just heartbroken and intimidated, and that's a scary environment. Like, it was
How old are they again at this point?
so this was 2022, and he is almost 15 now. So
Oh. Okay, so he's a
13-ish. Like, he's
teenager.
he's little. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, old enough to know what's going on, but definitely not old enough for me to have any sort of productive conversation to where he can understand really what's
Right.
happening.
Let alone sit in a courtroom and
Holy
there's a
crap.
judge and
Yeah.
with these attorneys and
And
oh,
like, jury, and it was just it's intimidating. It's
yeah.
what you see on TV.
Oh
That
yeah,
was
and
what
the
it looked
jury.
like. Yeah, like,
Yeah.
it looked like that.
Yeah.
And so the kids came in, and I remember his attorney said, "Do you love your dad?" And I was like, "Of course he does. Like, what kind of question is that?" And of course, that's the first question you're going to ask him,
Right.
to like break him down.
Mhm.
And I remember he asked my son, like, "What did you see?" And my son panicked and froze and didn't say anything,
Poor
which I
baby.
was nervous about, obviously. Like,
Right.
who knows what a kid is going to do, especially
Yeah.
sitting in front of their dad the first time he sees him in person. Like,
Right.
and he just sat there and smiled at him the whole time, because I'm sitting there and I'm just feeling mama bear protective
Your
of my
ex smiled
son
at your son the
the
whole time?
whole
Of
time, the
course. Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
time. And I'm trying not to react, because city prosecutor's telling me have no reaction. Do not react to
You're
what they're
like,
doing. And I'm
I
like,
better sit on my
excuse
hands. I
you?
better
Like,
like
how do
wear a
you do
mask,
that?
something.
And
Yes.
so it was the hardest thing I feel like that's kind of where I learned to kind of find my voice again, because I had to contain all of those things that I felt and wanted to just scream and cry. And
Right.
I had to hold all of that in, because the whole story was that I did it to myself and I was crazy and I made
Yeah.
it up. And if I showed that at all, I was told, and I don't know if this is correct, I believe it's correct, but I was told that if one jury member didn't believe one part of one of his charges, that he was off the hook. Like,
Wow.
it was an all or nothing kind of
Okay.
situation. And so I was just nervous. I'm like, that's so, like, I mean, I have the pictures of my face. I felt confident and I knew I was telling the truth.
Right.
But again, you're trying to convince random strangers
Yeah.
that these things happen
And
behind
he's a
closed doors.
very good manipulator. And
Absolutely.
his attorney probably was too.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
So my daughter comes and she's on stand. So she right now will turn 18 in September. And so I don't know, 15-ish, 16.
Okay.
Um, she gets on stand and she has a very different demeanor. She's mad. She's mad,
Okay.
mad.
Okay.
And she's sad, but she's more mad. She was just very blunt. And she's like, no, this is what I saw. And like, she said the things she
Told it.
remembered and the things that she saw.
Wow.
And that was hard as a mom. I was so proud of her for facing that moment because I was scared to face that
Right.
moment.
Just the fact that she had to do it.
Yeah. And so I always wonder now, like, how that's going to change how she shows up in the world and how she shows up in relationships and, just her demeanor in,
You just need to keep showing up for her,
yeah,
and that I think that's all you'll need to worry about,
yeah,
she knows that. She has someone solid.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we go through that day of jury trial, and I believe that was the day that they questioned me. And the following day was the day that he was bringing his witnesses. And his witnesses were the friend that was living with us,
Mhm. Your
and
great protector.
yes, and his
Unbelievable.
friend's dad that we had gone to his house that day, and my kids called him grandpa, and he said,
That
like,
made
your
you go
kids
back
can
home?
yes, he was his other witness.
Okay.
So they come in, and of course, his friend, no, I don't know. I had headphones on, and I was told that his reaction of, well, what happened was because he was live streaming a video game and he didn't know how to react, was what I was told. I don't know if that's true. I still think you're a pansy.
Yeah.
Like, do whatever you will with that. But
Mhm.
I don't care,
Right.
you know? So he came in. I don't know. I was there all the time, but like, I don't know. And then I think at one point he said, I wasn't even there that day. So then the prosecutor brought up the body cam video. And in the body cam video, he says, no, I was here. I'd gone to lunch with my ex girlfriend or something like that. So it just showed a really bad, yeah, which
Inconsistencies
was
and
really good for our case,
right,
right?
right.
Well, then the friend's dad comes in. And I had no idea what to expect with this one, really. Like, I didn't have any clue.
Right.
And he goes on stand, and I mean, he always was very well spoken. He always, like, was always well dressed and, like, just always carried himself well, right? And so
Mhm.
I was like, this could go really bad. I don't know.
Right.
Well, he comes in, and I don't even remember how they led into it, but the city prosecutor was asking about my appearance and asking about like my black eyes and leading into that. And he was like, no, she looked fine. And so the city prosecutor popped up on the screen a picture that the police had of my black eyes and the cut across my nose, and he lost it. Like, started screaming, and he was like, no, she didn't look like that. Like, God, like, it was like a TV show. I was like, what is happening? It was the weirdest thing. Like, belligerent. The judge had to tell him to calm down. And he was
Really?
like, no, I saw her. She didn't look like that. And I was like, it was just mind blowing because I'm like, okay, like,
Then you're still trying to talk to yourself. Don't say anything, like,
right,
don't
or
react.
react. And it was just the weirdest. And so I was like, okay. So at this point, again, I'm feeling like things are going okay, but they haven't put him on the stand yet. And they put him on the stand, and it's the same story that you would expect. The whole, like, she made it up. She's tried to
Honey.
leave me,
Yeah.
like all the things, right? And I'm honestly, I feel like I kind of blacked out at that point because I didn't really care what
Mhm.
his excuse was. I knew it wasn't going to be the truth. And I knew that I couldn't
Right.
react to it. So, in a sense, I almost feel like I blacked out because I was like, I'm present, but I'm not.
But not really, yeah.
Because I also didn't want him to feel like I was intimidated by him. I didn't wanna
Mhm.
give him that satisfaction.
Satisfaction,
I
right.
was done, and
Yeah.
as much as I was terrified, I was like, "Okay, like, I can do this." So, I remember we broke for the jury to deliberate, and it felt like days. Like, I walked over into the police station, and all the people working at the police station had the courtroom cameras on, like, watching, and it was just like, I felt so supported, and that was
Yeah.
amazing,
Oh.
but it was just nerve-wracking to
Yeah.
sit there and just wonder what the outcome was gonna be. And I remember my victim's advocate was the only person that could come in the courtroom with me, so I
Okay.
couldn't have, like, and at this point, I was talking to my family. We were rebuilding those
Oh,
relationships,
good.
but it was slow. Like, it's
Right.
hard when you've been betrayed by someone that's supposed to love you. It's
Yeah.
really hard to trust other people. And
Right.
so, and I always feel too, when you've been through any sort of trauma, I feel like you come to a place where it's hard to ask for help. because you don't trust that it's going to happen, or when they do, it makes you
Right.
feel better, all the different things, right?
Did you feel like your family abandoned you during that time, or was it more you where you're
No,
like,
it was
no?
definitely more me.
Okay.
It like I knew my mental state and my emotional state couldn't handle any sort of perceived rejection, if that makes sense.
Right.
So like when I would ask, like, hey, can you just come and sit at my house for me to sleep? And they couldn't accommodate that. I knew that wasn't a personal thing. People have lives, right?
Right.
You can't come sit at my house all the time. I understand that.
Yeah.
But they also didn't understand the importance of why I was asking. And we never really found that middle ground.
Mm-hmm.
And it was too hard for me to like ask for things and then not have them met. It started attacking me rebuilding who I was and my worth,
Right.
because I had already felt worthless.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I just kind of cut myself off. And that was definitely a me thing. Like they
Okay.
were showing up, they were taking my kids places, like they were doing all the things to build the relationship. And I was doing what I could to show up, but my trauma was just still so
Yeah.
there
You
that
you can only,
you can only do
show
what
up
you
with
can
what
do.
you have and at
Yeah.
that time. Yeah.
So, I was with my victim's advocate, and I remember telling her, once they read the verdict, I want to leave. I don't need to be there for whatever they say after. Because I knew I was holding my emotions for days, and
Yeah.
I knew I was nearing the end,
Right.
and I didn't know what the verdict was going to be. I knew they weren't giving him his sentence that day. I just knew they were telling me whether he was guilty or not guilty. And so I remember we walked back into the courtroom and he was sitting there, and I remember he turned back and looked at me, and I don't even know what the look on my face was. I felt so scared because in my mind, I knew what had happened,
Mhm.
but like what happens if they don't believe me?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like what
Like,
happens
what's
if
he
I
gonna
didn't
do
do enough?
next? And
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
And we sat down and the jury person stood up and they read the thing and found him guilty on all 5 charges. And I remember I instantly stood up. I didn't even give myself time to like take a breath. It was like up and out. And I don't know if he turned back and looked. I
Yeah.
was just out of there. And I remember I went and sat in the police station and I had the officers tell me when he had left the parking lot, because I didn't know how long they were going to take.
Right.
I needed a minute to process everything. I just felt numb.
I was gonna say, what were you feeling? Like,
Absolutely nothing
yeah.
at that moment. Like, I
Yeah.
think I was scared too, because at this point, he's still free. He
Right.
still gets to drive off
Right.
and go somewhere. And now I have, in his mind, I'm the one that
And
ruined his
God knows
life.
what's going on in his mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm grateful, but terrified
Yeah.
and all the things,
'Cause he's
right?
so unpredictable.
Yeah, well, and also knowing too, like, I've got to go home and tell my kids, right? Because
Right.
they're sitting there waiting. And what kid wants to know your dad was found guilty of domestic violence and, like,
Right.
I don't know, just horrible, crappy situation,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
So it happens. I think it was about a month later that they did his sentencing. And I remember reading my victim's impact statement. And that letter was a difficult one to write. I remember this one I understood much better than the first one that I wrote during the
Yeah.
6-week time period. And I think I wanted it to be made very clear that this was not I knew this was the first time he was in front of a jury, and I knew this was the first time he was convicted, but I wanted it to be made so clear that this was years that I was
Right.
living with. This was
Right.
not a one-day thing.
Right. One incident.
This was years. And I just wanted someone to know that before everything happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember they gave him the opportunity to come on and give his, I don't even know what they call it, I guess an impact statement after mine, right? He
Right.
came on after. And I remember I was just sitting in the corner, like crying, like after I was done. Cause it's like one of those things that you just like, you hold yourself together for the moment that you need to,
Right.
and then you're just done. Like there's nothing else you can
Right.
give.
Right.
And I remember just hearing him saying that he understood how this was going to impact him, and how he couldn't take his kids on field trips now because he has a record, and like it was
That's what he was worried about.
that's all he said, like the whole time. And it was mind blowing. It was mind blowing. Like at that point, humble yourself.
Right.
Like
But was it
lie.
really like it was mind blowing at the time, but
I mean,
That's
a
how
little
he
bit.
always shows up.
Absolutely. But at this point, like, humble yourself enough so that you don't have a sentence, so that you can, like, but no.
He doesn't have the ability
he wants everyone to believe that he didn't do it.
Yes.
So he's got to stay the victim.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, no, wasn't shocking, but yeah, a little bit.
But you're like, really still?
That's what I'm saying. Like, at what point? What else has to happen?
Right.
You know?
Like, it's just not clicking.
No, not at all. Not at all. And so the judge came on and he was amazing. He was like, I don't hear any remorse from you. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, you only talked about how this has affected you. You didn't acknowledge your children. You didn't acknowledge this woman who stood by you. You didn't acknowledge any of that. And so the judge, I mean, what he said made me feel better than the actual punishment, sentence, whatever it was. They ended up giving him 28 days in custody and then 30 days house arrest. But keep in mind, he's not working still. So tell me what kind of punishment house arrest is. Maybe tell him to get a job. That would have been more punishment.
Yeah.
And then they wanted like 20 hours of community service. And I came back and I was like, are you joking? Like, I work 40 hours in a week to take care of the children that he does not support. So why don't we do a little better than that?
It's still a misdemeanor?
Yeah.
Too? Okay.
So all five were misdemeanors, which is crazy to me because now I look back. So I go and speak to high schools now, which we'll get to that part in the story. But I tell them in the state of Utah, it is a higher charge for them to have a naked picture of themselves on their cell phone that they never send to anyone than he got. That is a more severe charge.
Wow.
And I mean, granted, that's terrifying, right? Who wants teenagers to have that?
Right.
But also mind-blowing that them to have a picture of their very own body that they don't even send to anyone is a more severe charge than he got for nearly killing me. That's mind-blowing to me.
For sure.
So, just broken. Like, the whole system is always broken. Everyone talks about it. But I think until you live it, you don't really understand what that means or what that looks like. 8
days.
Yeah, great. It's such a great time, right? So shortly after jury trial concluded, the Refuge Utah, so this was a nonprofit organization that helped me and my children, reached out to me and asked if I would be interested in sitting on their board and being a voice for survivors. And I was like, absolutely, I will.
What an honor.
I was so grateful. I also felt a little bit like underqualified. I remember my first meeting, I went and I had joined with 2 other members, and one like worked at a bank and one worked at a college, and they came to me and I just didn't really understand my place. And I had been a stay-at-home mom, and then I was kind of finding myself, and so they came to me and they're like, introduce yourself. And I was like, I'm a stay-at-home mom and I'm an office manager of a flight school and I have 3 kids. And that was all I said. And I was like, and so they were like, oh, welcome. They were all so sweet.
Yeah.
So they go about the meeting, and like, I still have not said, like, I'm a survivor, nothing.
Right.
No one knows this outside of the director of the refuge. And so they get to this point where they're talking about something about the website and what they think is worth spending money on. And so I'm like, okay, well, I feel something about this. I have an opinion. And I remembered my therapist telling me that opinions didn't have to be fact-based. Right. And so I raised my hand and I was like, well, and so I said, I'm like, this is my opinion about this and this is why I have it. And that was kind of like the beginning of me finding like where I fit in that world, right? And so that was kind of like where I think I started figuring out what this was going to look like for me. And I always knew that what I went through had to have a purpose. It's going to live inside me forever. There's not going to be anything I can do to change that. But if what is inside me has something that I'm using it for that's more beautiful than it was dark, then I think that that's amazing. And that was kind of where that shift started.
Right.
So
found your purpose with that. Yeah.
So I started going to board meetings. I started going to like their candlelight walks. They asked me to speak at their candlelight walk, and it was just like a 10 or 15-minute speech, but my kids got to come, and it was just beautiful. It was perfect and everything that I wanted it to be.
And you were probably starting to make friends in there.
Like everything was just kind of it was still scary, but like I was starting to feel like things made sense.
Right.
At this point, I'm still married to him because we couldn't go to divorce. He was asking for 50-50 custody of the kids. And I was like, you are delusional. Like, absolutely not. I'm not just giving in to you. That is what I have done for 18 years. I am done.
Right.
So no. So, like I had mentioned, I was represented by a free service. It's
Mhm.
called Utah Legal Services, and they were always so nice. But by the time we got to divorce, I think this was like my fourth or fifth attorney with them. And so it had just essentially been a file that had been passed down until we got to trial, which fair, right? They have so many cases. I
Right.
don't expect special treatment. But again, I wish that it had been respected a little bit more because that's my life.
Right.
This document is what the rest of my life will be based off of.
Mhm.
And I don't feel like that ever got portrayed to me, if that makes sense. I got
No,
a
it
phone call the
does.
night before and she was like, "I'm just reading your file and this is outrageous." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know." Thank you for the validation.
Yeah.
And so I just remember going in feeling a little anxious and a little nervous. The only thing I had gone in asking for was therapy reintroduction for the kids
Okay.
because they hadn't seen him in person at this
Right.
point. They had testified in jury trial, not against him, but just to what they saw, right? That's kind
Right.
of a hard thing when I say that. That feels awful because it wasn't against him. They
Right.
just testified,
Right.
right?
Facts. Yeah.
But I knew that they felt anxious to see him.
Mhm.
And so I was like, I feel like therapy reintroduction is normal. Like I said, I'm like, they already have a therapist. They're already going. It's already covered by insurance. I would just
Mhm.
like him to come down and meet with individually each of them with their therapists. And when the therapist says, "Okay, we're good," then he can have whatever parent time is set today. But until the therapist signs off, that's what I feel would be best for my children. These are my reasons.
Okay.
The
Which
judge,
seems fair, more than fair.
you would think. The judge turned to me and told me that I was petty, that I needed to be a better co-parent.
D-
I was shocked.
Did they
I
know the history?
Uh-huh. They had all of it there, but according to the court, I guess, once a case is like done and tried, it's done
That
and
doesn't
he's
mean that
forgiven.
person's healed
No,
or had anything to
which
change
made
or
this even more fun. Protective order is still in place. He has his new girlfriend with him. That, I mean, again, not shocking that she's with him. That fine, whatever. But like hard to like, right?
right.
He's his own attorney at this point because his mom is not paying for his attorney anymore. So the judge let him call me to the stand and question me. And I remember turning to the attorney. This one's going to make me cry. I remember turning to the attorney and I was like, "I can't do this. Like, don't make me do this. Like, there's a protective order. Like, can't that stop this?" And she asked the judge, and the judge was like, "There's a bailiff here. There's people here. She's safe. I want her on the stand." And I had to go and sit
Didn't
there.
give a shit about emotionally what
No,
that could do or anything.
no, not even a little bit. And I had to sit there, and he walked right up to the stand and looked me square in the face and knew every word to say, every phrase to say. Just, he knew every trigger that I had.
Of course he did.
And I had to just sit there and answer questions in the most polite, kind way because I had
That's
just been told that
terrible.
I was petty. And I remember
What kind of things did he ask you?
I
Do you
don't even
remember?
remember. I
Yeah,
just
yeah, I
felt
probably wouldn't either.
terrified. Like I
Yeah.
froze because I was like, whatever reaction I have right now, this judge he's judging me
Yeah.
based on my reactions, and I knew that at this
Right.
point. And so I was just so scared that I was going to say the wrong thing, answer a question
Yeah,
incorrectly, have the
for
wrong
sure.
face. I was terrified. And so obviously he's representing himself. He doesn't know all the things. He's not submitting paperwork correctly. So now he's sitting on the stand showing the judge text message screenshots, I guess, that we didn't even see because he never actually submitted them appropriately. And him and the judge are just talking on the stand. And I'm like, "Can we stop this? Like, this doesn't feel like it's going okay." And she's like, "He's going to bury himself. Just let it go." And I'm like,
Your
"Okay."
attorney said
Yeah.
this.
And I'm like, "Okay." And I don't know. Like, I have no idea. Right. And so I'm sitting
You're used
there.
to him being master
Yeah.
manipulator that talks his way through
Yeah.
anything.
And she would not shut it down. So we get to the end, and the judge brings up like, "Well, we haven't talked about alimony. Why hasn't alimony been discussed?" And my attorney says something, and he's like, "Well, yeah, you should get alimony." And I'm like, "Well, thanks, whatever." Like, he's not gonna pay it, so I don't care. Like,
Right.
whatever. So we leave, and minimum child parent time is set, and I have to send the kids with him that weekend. I got told the therapy reintroduction was not necessary, and that it
What
was
made that
fine.
judge think that he was okay? Just
I don't know if it
because
was
he said
because he
so?
had finished his like 28 days. I have no idea. So we had hit jury trial February 2022. This is now September 2022. So he's done his 28 days in custody, his 30 days house arrest. He's working on his community service. So according to the justice system, he's rehabilitated. And not
That's
one person
horrific.
ever called me and asked me, like, what do you think he needs? Was there drugs involved? There wasn't. Sometimes I wish that there was,
Would
because
make
then
more
there's a
sense.
reason,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Not just that you're crazy and like
Right.
you had so much hate inside you that this is how you had to act to people. But I just think it's crazy, even now, that not one person called and asked me any question about like what he needed. And I remember after that, it was that weekend that I was supposed to send the kids with him for the very first time. And I knew that they were going into a house with his new girlfriend and her daughter. And I know the dynamic is going to be off. Like, I'm nervous about it. And
How do the kids feel about going at this?
anxious,
Okay.
so anxious, especially the older two. The younger one, not so much, because at this point, when we left and when all of this went down, she was like 4, almost 5.
Okay.
So she knows, like, she would make random comments all the time. I remember I was in the car with my mom one time, and I think one of her coworkers was in the car, and my daughter randomly out of nowhere was like, "Mom, do you remember that one time that Dad hit you in the nose and it was bleeding?" And I
Oh
was like,
God.
uh-huh. I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
I do remember that. And so I think that was her way of processing it, is just like as random thoughts, and she would just say it. And that is still her to this day. Whatever is in
Oh.
her mind, you will know it. And so I think that it was just things like that that we were all kind of trying to, and I didn't know what she was going to say when she goes there for the weekend. Is she going to
Right.
say something that's going to make him mad? Because
Right.
I let her say whatever she wants, and I'm not ever going to get mad at her for that.
Right.
That's not going to be the same reaction she
Mm-mm.
gets. So I remember we set pickup location at a police station because
Okay.
I don't feel comfortable. I need some sort of
Sure.
security, you know?
Right.
So I remember I sent the kids that weekend and it felt awful.
Mm.
Like it felt so, I don't know, just unfair to them, unfair to the situation.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's so crazy that the judge didn't at least say, like, that the kids could call you during the weekend just to check in
Well, and they
or
had their cell phones that I provided
okay.
and they kept. And like I said, the one thing that was really hard too is my therapist told me, send the things that they absolutely need, but don't send like a bunch of clothes and things. Like, it's his job to provide that now.
Right.
You have busted your butt for the
Right.
last year and a half to get all of these things for them. You're not going to send them and have them forget them at his house. Like,
Right.
I couldn't afford to replace them.
Right.
I was working an office manager job, making $18 an hour, trying to support 3 kids and pay rent. Like,
Right.
I couldn't afford to do that, and I felt bad because in my head, I'm not giving my kids what they need.
Yeah.
And I talked to my older daughter about it, and I was like, "This is why. Like, I want you to bring underwear, I want you to bring socks, I want you to bring toothbrushes." Like, we went through, and I didn't send them with nothing,
Right.
but I also was like, "Absolutely not." Like,
Yeah.
I was just frustrated,
Mhm.
and I feel like I had rights to be frustrated.
Absolutely.
But like who knows how to handle that, right?
You
Maybe I
don't
did,
know. You're
maybe I
right.
didn't. I don't
Right.
know.
No, I think that that's very fair, especially if your therapist is saying to deal with it like that.
Well, just
Uh,
knowing how he is, right? And I
Right.
feel like it was me setting boundaries really early on, not knowing
Yes.
how long I was going to co-parent with him
Mhm.
and not knowing what was going to be expected of me, and knowing he had taken advantage of me the whole entire
Right.
time we were together. And if I gave any part of anything, he's going to grab it and run.
See, I fully agree with that.
So I
The whole big
understood.
picture, yeah,
It was just
definitely.
really hard, and that's hard to explain to kids,
Yes. But he had to be responsible for something. Go get your kids some clothes. Get them what they need,
you would think. So,
you would think. Yeah.
um, so I remember after my attorney told me, I was like, I hated all of that. Like, none of that felt fair. She's like, "Well, you got awarded money. Just be happy." And I was like, literally don't even care. Like, and I knew you're not, I had set up a case with like our state ORS where it was collecting money from him, but it was
Mhm.
never consistent. It was always random. Sometimes it was $100, sometimes it was
So he
$300. It
wasn't
was
working a steady job.
no, oh, he was. But at divorce, when we went to trial, he was not. And so they had to impute him, I think is the word. I don't even know if that's the correct word, at minimum
Minimum
wage,
wage,
which is
yeah.
$7.25 an hour in the state of Utah. And so I argued and I was like, that is bullcrap. Like, give me one place that pays $7.25 an hour. McDonald's pays 15.
Right.
So I brought like pictures. So they ended up upping it to like $9.80 an hour or something.
Ugh.
So ORS still only ordered
It
him to
should have been
pay.
what he's capable of making,
Right.
you know?
So they ordered him $479 a month for 3 children. And I was like, okay, like what does that pay for?
Right.
Please tell me.
Oh my goodness.
So I mean, whatever, right? And knowing that like maybe I get some, maybe I don't. That was never a consistent
You
thing. That was
couldn't
not what I worried
depend on
about.
it. Yeah.
So I'm sending my kids every other weekend. He's supposed to get them on a weekday, but at this point he's living like an hour away from us. And so I don't even remember how. I think for a while he came down and did like he would come and get him and go to a park or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And um at this point I am done dating. I am avoiding all of it. I have a friend and all boys love her and we had fun. I was just like the little sidekick, right? That would just
Mm-hmm.
wiggle behind her, you know? And I was working as an office manager at a flight school.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one day this guy starts
Oh, at a
coming
flight
outside at a
school. I
flight
know.
school.
Okay.
And I remember I was in the car with her because we were
Mm.
driving out to our maintenance hangar, and I saw this guy, and he's walking, he's taking the garbage out, and I was like, he is cute. And so we drive over, and we find out that he's the new chief pilot of another flight school that is at Provo Airport, was where we were based at the
Okay.
time. And I remember, like, we stopped, we said hi. And I remember I stalked him on social media later that night, but he had a girlfriend at the time. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. Like, it's fine. And so we would see each other randomly, but like, it just, we didn't ever really
Yeah.
talk. Well, then I did my first candlelight walk for the refuge. And we were so lucky to have this motorcycle club called Rogue Souls show up, and they showed up in force. It was incredible. Like, I still get chills talking about it.
Oh.
We had our little speech, and then the motorcycle club rolled up in front of the Capitol with purple lights and purple bandanas and everything, and it was just so cool. And so, in a thank you, I agreed to do a photo shoot for them after, because
Uh-huh.
that in my past life, that was what I did. And so we did this such a cool photo shoot where we had like fire, and it was just so fun.
Oh,
Like, they were just the
wow.
coolest humans that supported me in the coolest ways.
Yeah.
And so I posted these on social media. So this guy that I thought was so cute that took out the garbage messages me on social media, and he's like, "These pictures are so cool. Like, why are you working at a flight school?" And I was like, "Well," I was like, "that's complicated." And he was like, "Well, let's go to lunch and talk about it." Well, my mind, I'm thinking that he wants the in to meet my friend, because that's always what happened. She was the
Oh,
cute
okay.
one, right?
Okay. Uh-huh.
So I'm like, yeah, come over to the office. Like, let's talk about it, right? So he comes over to her office, and I think we both left very confused that day, because I thought he was hitting on her. He thought he was hitting on me. We planned a lunch, but it was all 3 of us, and it was very convoluted. And so I remember after he messaged me, and he was like, "I'm totally fine to go to lunch with all you guys, but what do you think about just going to lunch with me?" And I was like, "I love that plan." And so we started hanging out. And at this point, he's a firefighter and he's a chief pilot of a flight school, so overachiever. And I remember I felt very connected to him very early on. He was very supportive of like my board meetings, and
Mhm.
just a really cool human. I felt like very safe with him. And my divorce had just been finalized about a month later, or a month previous, sorry. And I remember I kind of felt like we were going to date. Like, it kind of felt like we were headed that way, but I was scared.
Mhm.
And so I said, I'm like, okay, like, if you feel like you want to be with me, I'm just going to give you all of the information. Like, this is
So
what
at this
I,
point, he doesn't know the whole
not
story
really.
yet? Okay.
No. I'm not really super, like, I'm doing events and I'm doing things, but I don't really talk about it outside of that. So I kind of fire hose him is what I said. And we immediately laugh at that. But I just kind of said, like, this is what we've gone through. This is the situation I'm in right now. This is like, I just kind of gave him all of the facts. And I said, I'm like, if you meet my kids, my youngest will probably call you dad very early on, because I knew she was not being forced, but I didn't know exactly. She was being asked to call the girlfriend mom when she was going. So I knew those words were confusing in her mind, and I
So it
knew
would be natural for her to
to
then
do it to him, and I
right,
didn't want him to
right,
be intimidated by that, right? I
right,
can't control what's happening there, but I know how it's going to change her here.
right.
And so I just didn't want him to be intimidated, and he was like, "Nope, I'm good." And I was like, "Okay." So
You're
I
like,
let
"Are you
him.
sure you still wanna talk to
Well,
me?"
that's why I was like, because I had kind of just come to a resolve that I'm like, okay, I'm a single mom. I have 3 kids. Like, I've got this ex-husband who is insane. Another fun fact that I totally missed, but I wanted to bring up. I remember the first weekend that I sent them with him. I remember asking my victim's advocate, like, okay, he had all of these guns when he was arrested. I know he still has them.
Yeah.
What happens now? And she said to me, the state of Utah doesn't take them from him. He has to voluntarily surrender them or get caught using them. Because he's a restricted person. He can't have a weapon, but because he owned them prior to his arrest, they said it's too dangerous for them to take the weapons from him, so they won't go take them. So I had to send my children to his home knowing he still had
Wow, that
access
sounds
to
like
all of
that's
that.
something that needs to be changed.
Right? Isn't that
That's
insane?
crazy.
It blew my mind. And I mean, I talk about it all the time because I say all the time it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I like I said, it's disgusting. I can't be the only one that finds that disgusting.
Right,
If
right,
your kid was in that situation, would you just sit there and be like, "Okay, that's totally fine?"
right.
Because I wasn't. I was not fine with it, but I was told I had to send my kids to that. And so at this point I'm still sending my kids to him, but I've started dating my now husband, but we're just dating at the time. And he was incredible. He was incredible to let them talk about whatever emotion they had about him. It was really hard because I think any kid that is in a co-parenting situation has really unstable emotions sometimes.
For sure.
And our youngest was definitely having that. When she would come back, she would lay on the floor and cry and wouldn't let me touch her and just different things, right? And I
Because things were
knew,
probably being said.
and I
Or
didn't even know exactly. I just knew she was showing up at our house very differently. And I was having a hard time parent because it was just breaking me down emotionally. It was hard
right.
for me to see my kids that way. And he was so amazing to just hold that space. And I do think that probably part of his firefighter background played a part in that.
Yeah.
Like he knew how to calm down a situation and calm down them and show up for them in a way that was just so beautiful and effortless.
Oh.
It was like it I know that that was one of the things that made me fall in love with him first because he just was so safe for all of us.
Right.
It
Were you always like waiting for the ball to drop though, or something with him? Just
kind
because of
of
what you were used to, and now you have someone amazing. Were you like self-sabotaging at all, or
I had done a lot of work on myself over
okay.
that year and a half, and I think because I had come to the place where I was like, okay, I'm fine to just be single forever.
Right.
I
Okay,
had
good.
I had kind of known what I wanted in my next relationship, and I knew the things that I really hated about my previous one and things that how I hated how I showed up, right?
Right.
I wasn't great at setting boundaries. I wasn't great at talking about my emotions. Clearly my communication struggled. So I really wanted to focus on all those things before I even considered it.
Mhm.
And I did think about dating a little bit. There were a few dates, but I just knew I wasn't ready. Like
Right.
I could feel that things were triggering inside of me. And I was like, my kids have been through so much. My job right now is to just be there for them. And
Right.
working full time and trying to be there for them emotionally was pulling me in so many directions. And so I had done a lot of work, but I think because of that, I did have moments where I did feel like I was trying to self sabotage.
Mhm.
But as soon as I felt that, I just went to him and I'm like, this is what I'm feeling. This is why I'm feeling it. This is what I like, whatever it was.
So
And
you guys had
he,
good communication,
from the get go,
and
from the
something
get
you're
go.
so not used to. Yeah.
No, it
Yeah.
felt really intimidating at first and
Yeah.
uncomfortable because it's just not something I was ever used to. Even, before,
Right.
I think that even like a generational thing, with my parents, you just don't
Mhm.
talk about it. If you don't talk about it, it didn't happen,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so it just was something that was so foreign to me, but he was always so good at it.
Mm.
And
I
I
love
knew,
that.
I know, he was incredible. And so we're still struggling. He's falling in love with my kids. My kids and I move in with him in like December. So we dated for like 2 months. And I was like, okay, like we're 35 years, like we know we're going to be together at this point. We had gone through enough trials and all of this. He's falling in love with my kids. We're sending them over to the ex husband's house. That was difficult. Through this period, we're getting texts from the oldest, and she's like, they're not coming out of their bedroom. There's no food in the house. There's like half of a muffin and things that we need to like cook. And she's like, I don't know what to do. And the youngest was waking up and having nightmares in the middle of the night, but he wasn't waking up to take care of her. It was the oldest that was taking care of her, which was triggering so many things for her. And all of them were just
Sure.
struggling. And so my husband now, well, we're dating, so he's, I guess, my boyfriend, which sounds weird when you're over 30, but he's like, let me send you guys food. Like, I'll DoorDash it. And she was like, don't, he'll be mad. Like, she wouldn't even let us send food to the house because she was so scared of his reactions.
Were they using or anything
I
like that?
don't know. Like, I mean, I could have my suspicions, but I don't ever feel like that's my place to talk on it because I don't know,
Yeah.
right? Like, it was
But
never
they were like
his.
hiding out in the bedroom?
Well,
Like,
that was always the vibe, right? You always had to take care of him and his needs.
that's
And so I
right.
knew it wasn't shocking to me. Like, it was what I was required to do. But it's just putting
Yes.
pressure on the kids,
Kids. Right.
right?
Right.
And so
Okay.
I'm going to my victim's advocate and I'm like, there's got to be something we can do with this. Like, this is awful. And so we filed for a protective order, or one of them. There's a protective order, restraining order. We filed for one of them, and we got told fear of abuse is not abuse. They rejected it. And so I immediately applied for the other one because at this point I have learned well enough that if I want anything in the justice system, there's always a way to get there. You just have to find the
Right.
loophole to get there.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I'm filing
Which
this
is
next one.
crazy.
Dumb. It's the stupidest thing on the planet. So I'm filing this other one. They approve it. So this is probably January-ish of 2023.
Okay.
At this point, I'm engaged to my now husband, and the kids are not going over with him anymore. There's more dynamic to that, but again, not my place to speak on. Maybe I'll
Mm-hmm.
tell you about it privately
Yeah.
later.
We'll talk about that at
Um,
lunch.
a couple months go by, and we have an attorney because you can't just, I mean, you could, but it's confusing, right?
Right.
So at this point, we have paid thousands and thousands of dollars to keep kids safe, which is stupid to me. That
Mm-hmm.
is
Right.
absolutely crazy. And he calls our attorney and he says, I want to give up my parental rights to the kids. And he
Like
says,
out of nowhere, like it wasn't leading up to that, or
I mean, again, I kind of knew that we were going to end there because that's what his birth dad did, if you remember back to the
oh
beginning of the story.
yes,
And so in my
yes.
mind, I always kind of knew that we would probably end there. I just didn't know the path that it would take, right?
Right.
And so at this point, he's saying to our attorney, the kids are being told all these lies about me, and for their mental well-being, I need to step away. I'm just going to let her new husband adopt them.
Okay.
Okay. So this presents a really like difficult situation as a mom because multiple emotions are coming up, right? I feel like that's probably what's best for them as far
Right.
as like a stable environment and a stable household and not going back and forth and all of the things. And I also know how I feel thinking about my dad calling and saying, I don't want to be your dad anymore. And that wrecks my soul.
For the kids. Yeah.
And I didn't know how to present it. I knew that that was what I wanted. It just like it felt really crappy.
Mm-hmm. Because you didn't want them not to feel wanted.
No, they
Yeah.
already did. Like they had
Right.
already been through so much, and I knew getting through it, like if we could get to the other side, we're gonna be better in the end. But
Right.
going through that, like how do you go and tell your kid, like what? How do you even word that?
You're
Like
right.
where do you start?
Yeah.
And so I remember I talked. He was my fiance at the time, and he was like, "Absolutely, like I will adopt them. Let's do it." Like he was all gung ho. He was ready. I knew that that was what was best for them. That was going to provide a much more stable father figure for them, stable
Mm-hmm.
household. And I mean, let's get real. Even in a healthy co-parenting situation, bouncing back and forth between two households is hard.
Right.
That was alleviating that for them.
Yeah.
But again, we're in this situation that just feels impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Emotionally, it feels impossible.
Right.
So I remember I texted my therapist and I was like, I need to talk. Like it was totally inappropriate, but I didn't know what to
Right.
do. And I remember she called me And we talked it out, and she was like, no, like we've talked about, it's not your job to defend his actions or
Mm-hmm.
defend what he's choosing. Like, it is your job to deliver the information in an age appropriate way.
Right.
That's your job.
Right.
So we took the older two kids and we asked them, we said, do you want to be adopted? We gave them the choice because, I mean, our choice had been taken from us.
Right.
All of our choices had been taken.
Sure.
And they were sad, obviously. Like, that's a hard emotional thing to face. But I think that they had felt so accepted and loved by him
Mm-hmm.
that it counteracted that in some,
That
you know what
rejection
I
feeling.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, we start going through the adoption process, which was a whole nother burden all in itself. It just took forever. It was really difficult because he wouldn't sign a paper saying that he was giving up parental rights and my new husband could adopt them. We had to file all these different paperworks. And at this point, I had paid thousands and thousands of dollars. And I'm like, okay, I can't do this anymore. This isn't sustainable to take
Right.
care of them and pay this.
Sure.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to try and figure it out. So our attorney dropped us. She was like, if you can't give me $2,000 this week, it was 2 weeks before Christmas. And she was like, if you can't give us $2,000 this week, then we're done. And I was like, I can't. Like, if you can give me till January, like I
Right.
can, but there's no way.
Right.
And within an hour, she had filed paperwork with the court. And I was like, okay.
Thanks.
So I was like, okay, well, I guess like we're just going to figure it out. So at this point, we're planning our wedding and we're trying to do all of that and just still like live life, right? Not focus on the negative stuff so much. I'm still sitting on the board for the refuge.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, life is good, all things considered. You know, the
Right.
kids are starting to get more stable. They're getting involved in school, which was not anything that they had before.
Right.
So, we finally get married, which was amazing. And shortly after, I got pregnant. We were trying to get pregnant. My husband did not have any kids of his own, and so
Okay.
we decided like he deserves that. He showed up as
Right.
the most incredible dad to my kids. And so I got pregnant and it ended up being twins. And so now we have 5 children and it is insane.
I'm
But
sure.
it is so much fun. And they turn 1 on the 8th. So is that
Oh,
6
so they're
days
little,
away? Like,
little.
yeah, they're like almost 1. We
Yes.
fly home and it is their birthday.
Oh.
So
Oh.
obviously that put a delay in adoption things because I'm trying to figure it out myself, but I
Right.
was so sick. So we were still doing things, but we just recently on July 3rd had our final adoption hearing and he adopted them. I know it's gonna make me cry. He adopted them and it was so beautiful. And ironically enough, my ex-husband's birth dad was at the adoption.
What?
I know, I gotta get that. He's still a part. So I told you that he was one of the only ones that kind of were let in the house that last year that I was with
Yeah.
him. And once everything separated, he still stayed in contact with me. And I definitely did not trust that relationship at first. That felt uncomfortable. And I
Right.
kept him at an arm's length for
Sure.
at least a year. Like,
Well,
I
you
was
didn't know
very
what he was doing
cautious.
on the other side, and
Well, and he had told me, he's like, I'm not talking to him. Like, I don't agree with what he did to you guys. I'm so sorry. And again, I knew he wasn't in constant contact with him. It had been a
okay.
very on and off relationship throughout his whole life.
Right.
So I had kind of believed what he had to say, but he was like, I just care about you. I care about the kids. I just want to be there for you guys. And so, you know, I would ask the kids, like, do you want to see him? And they were like, yeah, you know, out in public, we can do things. And so I would invite them to like sports games or things if we were out by their house
Right.
where it like wasn't so uncomfortable where it's like direct conversation.
Yeah.
And throughout the years, he's just been so patient and been amazing with the kids.
And he showed up.
He showed up. And it was just,
Wow.
for me, it was really beautiful closure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it sucks. It sucks that we ended there, but I'm so grateful for the life that we have now
Yeah.
and like the ability that we have to be loved by someone because I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of people turn off to love after they've been betrayed by
God,
someone
for
that's supposed to
sure.
love them.
Yes.
So
Or you
now,
self-sabotage everything
right?
after and just
Everything.
all the trauma.
Yes. So now I do a lot of things, but the refuge is just so important to me. They saved my life. They saved my life. And I think you hear about it all the time. The shelter was full when my abuser was arrested. That happens all over the place,
Yeah, it
right?
does. Yes.
And so I was lucky enough that the refuge, I think it was about 7 years ago, they were one of 11 programs that started using VOCA funds to help victims get back into apartments. And I was one of the people to receive that. So they were able to like pay my apartment deposit. They knew I had
Okay.
a job. They knew I had a way to sustain it. I just needed that little
Right.
help.
Yes.
Like, so I know, for example, last year our shelter served like 170 people, but had to turn away 450.
Wow.
Isn't that insane? And so it's
Yes.
just crazy. Right now we're working on saving up money to build a new shelter that will dramatically increase. Right now I think we only have 25 beds and the new shelter will be like 100 and something. It will be severely different and so big. Give
Wow.
survivors a chance to just feel safe for a minute.
And just think those numbers are only the people that are asking for
Calling.
help.
They're
Yeah.
calling.
Right.
And there's so many people that
So many that
don't.
don't. Yes.
And so just knowing all of those
Oh, gives
things,
me the chills.
right? It's
Yeah.
heartbreaking. And I'm just so grateful that my situation played out the way that it did
Mm-hmm.
because I know that is why I was successful.
Right.
And so I kind of looked back at my situation and I was like, okay, I met him when I was a teenager. I met him when I knew everything. And so my mom works at a high school now, and I went to her social worker and I was like, I want to talk to high schoolers. I want to talk to them. And I started talking in his classes. And I had the refuge prevention team come with me. And they had already been presenting in health classes, but we
Mm-hmm.
kind of implemented my story into it, where
Okay.
we start like just telling them when I met him and how it looked, and not in a scary way because it wasn't scary.
Right.
I loved him and I was in love with him and I thought I knew what love was and all of the things. And so I just went because I feel like so often when domestic violence is spoken about, it's a number or a statistic and it's not relatable to a human or a person.
Yes.
And so I started going around to high schools and speaking at high schools. And just recently, before I came here, I hosted my very first like event to the public where just anyone could come, because I had a couple people that had asked, like, do you ever do it where I can just bring my daughter? And I was like, well, I've only ever done it in like closed classes, but why not?
Right.
And we had like 60, sorry, I'm gonna cry. We had like 65 people show up. And I was just amazed.
Oh my
Like I
gosh.
felt so honored and so blessed that they would
Yes.
just show up. It I felt so grateful. So we had them show up. I hope to do so many more.
Oh.
And now that the adoption is finalized, I'm hoping to start a podcast of my own just to talk to other. I feel like overcoming trauma is so difficult. And I feel like it just changes how you show up in the world. It
Right.
changes how you show
Right.
up in relationships. And I know
And you
how
do feel so alone. And
so alone.
yes. And that's why, like, your story, all these stories, it's so important
Yes,
because then people are like, oh, wait,
I can do this.
someone else has done this.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I just like I know it's changed how we parent. It changes how I
Mm-hmm.
am with my husband. It changes our relationship and how we communicate. And I just think it's beautiful how trauma can become something beautiful after.
Yes. Yes.
So now,
If you think there's hope. So
yes.
many people, like we've said 100 times, how you felt, I have felt like that before. Like,
Yes.
you don't think that anyone would understand
Yeah.
or could relate.
Well,
But
and
there are
you've been
so
made to
many.
feel like that you are so
So low.
alone.
Yeah.
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 So now
Wow.
nothing but up. Just hoping to be a really incredible mom and
Well, I think you already are.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And you're
And
setting an amazing example.
thank you so much. I hope so. It terrifies
Yeah.
me that now my oldest daughter is dating, and I hope she always feels
Oh,
like she can come and talk to me. So far, so good.
she
But,
better.
well, and I think,
Yeah.
again, that's why our situation was crappy. But I'm so grateful that she was in it the way she is because
Mm-hmm.
now we have a connection that we wouldn't have had otherwise.
Right.
I hate how we got it,
For sure.
but I love the
Yes.
connection that we have.
Yes.
So,
He's like out of the picture, doesn't harass you guys, anything now?
I mean, they still make posts on social media about how I'm crazy and about how
Oh,
I made it
whatever.
up and whatever. So that still happens,
Yeah.
but I keep them blocked. I hear about it randomly.
Sure.
I know that he's still in the state of Utah. He only lives about an hour north of us, last I heard. So I try to always kind of know where he's at if I can,
Yeah.
because it makes me anxious. I just want to avoid that city at all
Right.
costs. I have a
Right.
friend that lives in the city he's in now. And so I know when I go see her, I go to her house and I go home. I don't stop at gas stations. I don't stop at the
Yeah.
grocery because I just don't want the chance.
Right.
I don't know how I would react. I can guess that I would probably freeze and panic. As much as I want to say I would get all
You don't
I
know.
don't.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
probably panic, and I don't want to figure that out. So
No. Good. It's better to
Yeah.
avoid it.
So I just live my life and raise my babies.
And just telling your story and putting it out. How you just said about the 60-some people that
I
showed up.
know. Isn't that
I mean, didn't
incredible?
that just
It
makes
was
your
amazing.
heart like sing?
Well, and it was incredible too because it was so many of my daughter's friends that are
Oh,
like teenagers that like I was so passionate about them hearing, and they were all so sweet. Like so many of them messaged me after and were just so kind. And
oh,
like they were like, no, like I had one girl come up and she was like, I realize I have so many toxic relationships in my life. And I was like, I'm so sorry, but thank you for coming.
yeah.
And so my next goal is to do one that boys want to come to because I
Yes.
don't think it's exclusive to girls.
No, absolutely
This
not.
one just happened to play out that the marketing for the event was mothers
Right.
and daughters because I think it's important to have a mother, especially when we're talking about trauma. I
Yeah.
mean, we don't talk about like specific events of abuse, but I
Mm-hmm.
talk about, what my relationship looked like, what it led to, and why they should pay attention to me. We talk about, him
Right.
wanting to date other girls when we started and how it progressed through our relationship because you can see he was like, it boiling the lobster, is
Yeah.
that what it is?
Yeah.
Like you can see it. Now looking back, I would have never admitted to it in the moment, but I
Not
can
when
see
you're
it
in it.
now.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think
Wow.
telling the story in that way.
And it might make, light bulb go off for a lot of people that are in the same
Yeah.
situations. That's what's
So
beautiful.
thank you.
My gosh, I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
It's an
Thank you.
inspiration.
Thank you
It,
so much. Thank you for
you're
having me on and
No, I
talking to
love that you were
me.
able to come on here and tell all
It
this.
was beautiful. I'm having so much fun out here. I'm definitely coming back.
Yes, Nashville's fun for
It's so much
sure.
fun.
Yeah,
So fun.
it is.
So
And I'll make sure kind of adds all your stuff like the refuge, everything,
thank
in the
you. That would
description.
be I'm gonna cry. Thank you
No,
so
so then that way,
much.
if God forbid, if there's somebody else in Utah and they do listen to your
I
story and
hope
they, I guess, make me
so.
cry.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I just remember feeling like I had no choice. Like I felt like I
Yeah,
had nowhere to go. And like as much as you want to go and like it was great that I had a friend that she came and picked me up, but that's not where you heal.
right,
That's not where you find yourself.
right,
You have been stripped of every part of who you are
right.
and you have to be given that back.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be who I am today without them. So,
Wow. I love it.
yeah.
We'll make sure everybody has access to that
Thank you
too.
so so much.
And all the things you're doing.
I know I can't keep still. It doesn't
And
help that my husband's gone half the month. He was gone for training when I had my idea for my mother-daughter event, and he called me. He was on a flight. And he called me and I was like, honey. He's like, what? And
wait,
I was
what?
and I was like, I'm planning an event. And he's like, okay. He's like, when are we doing it? And I was like, well, I think we're gonna do it right before we go to Nashville. And he's like, is that a smart idea? And I'm like, yes.
Absolutely.
Why not? And so it was so funny. And it ended up that he did have to leave for work. They flew him out for work and he wasn't home for my event, but that's okay.
Oh, he's here
But
today
he is
though,
here. He's
which is
good. He got
awesome.
to come with me to Nashville. So
Yes,
that was all that
yes.
mattered.
All right. Well, thank you.